Capital betrayal. Ethan, a brilliant and hard-working man, sacrifices everything for his girlfriend Serafina's elite education and ambitious dreams. He finances her future, accumulating debt, convinced of their shared success. However, as Serafina climbs the social and professional ladder, she meets Julian, a charismatic heir, and cold-heartedly abandons Ethan, shattering his world and leaving him financially ruined. Consumed by rage, Ethan dedicates himself to amassing his own fortune in international finance, becoming an enigmatic power player. He secretly becomes the primary investor in Julian's prestigious family business, making himself indispensable. The day of reckoning arrives on Serafina and Julian's wedding anniversary, a date painfully coinciding with Christmas. Ethan reveals his true identity and simultaneously pulls his colossal investment, triggering a catastrophic financial collapse that unravels their opulent world, a chilling testament to the true cost of capital betrayal. The fluorescent lights of the warehouse hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency that seemed to vibrate in the hollows of my skull. It was 3 a.m, and the air inside the distribution center was stale, smelling of cardboard dust, diesel fumes from the loading bay, and the sour scent of exhausted men. My gloves were wearing thin at the thumbs, the friction of 1,000 boxes slowly eating through the synthetic leather, just as the double shifts were eating through my stamina. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. "Ethan, you're slowing down on line 4, the shift supervisor barked, his voice cracking over the din of the conveyor belts. "On it!" I shouted back, my voice raspy. I bent my knees, heaving a crate marked fragile onto the pallet. My lower back screamed in protest, a sharp, hot line of pain that had become my constant companion over the last 6 months. Every box wasn't just weight, it was currency. That crate was a textbook. The next one was a fraction of a semester's rent in a zip code I had no business living in. The one after that was the train fare Serafina needed to get to her internship in the city. I wasn't moving boxes, I was building a pedestal. When the whistle finally blew at 5, the relief was physical, a sudden release of tension that nearly sent me into the concrete floor. I clocked out, my fingers trembling slightly as I punched the time card. The digital readout displayed my accumulated hours for the week. 62. Combined with my day job as a junior data analyst, I was clocking over 100 hours of labor a week. Stepping out into the pre-dawn darkness, the winter air bit at my exposed face. It was December, the kind that sinks into your bones and refuses to leave. Snow flurries danced under the street lamps, turning the grime of the industrial district into something deceptively beautiful. Most people saw the cold as a nuisance. I saw it as a reminder. Christmas was coming. I walked the 12 blocks to the subway station to save the bus fare. Every dollar saved was a dollar directed toward the Future Fund, a savings account nickname that Serafina and I whispered like a prayer. By the time I reached our apartment, a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that groaned with every gust of wind, the sun was threatening to breach the horizon. I turned the key in the lock slowly, terrified of waking her, but as the door creaked open, I saw the lamp in the corner was still on. Serafina was asleep at the small, wobbly kitchen table we used as a desk. Her head rested on an open volume of advanced macroeconomics. Her golden hair fanned out across the pages like spilled silk. Even in the harsh light of the cheap lamp, she was breathtaking. There was a softness to her features that the world hadn't hardened yet, a potential that radiated from her, even in sleep. I closed the door silently, toeing off my wet boots and placing them on the rag by the door. My socks were damp, and the chill of the floorboards seeped through instantly, but I ignored it. I walked over to her, my movements heavy with fatigue, but light with affection. "Fina," I whispered, brushing a stray hair from her cheek. She stirred, her eyelashes fluttering before opening to reveal eyes the color of polished jade. For a second, she looked disoriented, panic flaring in her gaze before she focused on me. "Ethan, what time is it?" Her voice was thick with sleep. She sat up abruptly, rubbing her face. "Oh God, I fell asleep. I have the case study due at 8. "It's 5:30. You have time," I said, walking to the kitchenette to put the kettle on. "I'll make coffee." She groaned, slumping back in the chair. "I can't do this. I looked at the syllabus for the next term, Ethan. The tuition adjustment. They raised it by another 4%, and the networking gala requires a ticket that costs more than our monthly grocery budget. I watched the blue flame of the gas stove flicker, the heat failing to warm my frozen hands. Don't worry about the money. How can I not worry about the money? She turned in the chair, her eyes wide and pleading. Look at you. You look like a ghost. You're working yourself to death, and for what? So I can go to cocktail parties with people who were born owning half the city. I poured the boiling water into our chipped French press. The aroma of dark roast coffee filled the tiny room, masking the scent of the warehouse that clung to my clothes. I brought the mug to her, kneeling beside her chair so I could look up into her face. It's not just a party, Serafina. It's access. It's the room where it happens, I said, my voice steady, anchoring her. We talked about this. Your talent is useless if the right people don't see it. You belong there. You have a mind that can run circles around those trust fund kids. They have the money, but you have the fire. I'm just buying the kindling. She took the mug, her hands wrapping around it for warmth. But it's too much. The loans are maxed out. You're paying for the apartment, the food, the books, and now this gala. I feel like a parasite. Stop, I said, sharp enough to cut through her spiral. I took her hand in mine. My skin was rough, calloused, and dry, contrasting with the smooth, manicured perfection of hers, a manicure I had insisted she get because appearance is currency in that world. We are a team, I told her, believing it with every fiber of my being. Think of it as an investment, like a startup. I'm the angel investor. You're the unicorn company. When you make it, and you will make it, this will all just be a story we tell at dinner parties. We'll laugh about the drafty windows and the instant noodles. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You really believe that, don't you? I know it. Serafina leaned down and kissed my forehead. Her lips were warm, and for a moment, the ache in my back and the burning in my eyes vanished. It was the fuel I ran on. Not caffeine, not sleep, but her success. Her validation. Okay, she breathed, straightening up and pulling her textbook closer. Okay, I'll make it worth it. I promise, Ethan. I'll graduate top of the class. I'll get the placement at Sterling Holloway. And then, I prompted, standing up to massage my cramping legs. And then I'll buy you a house. A real house. With heating that works and a bed that doesn't squeak. She smiled, the ambitious spark returning to her eyes. And we'll get married. A real wedding. Not at the courthouse. I walked over to the window. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, coating the grimy city streets in pristine white. It was beautiful. A Christmas wedding, I murmured, staring at the swirling flakes. Like we talked about last year. A Christmas wedding, she agreed, her voice gaining strength as she typed a sentence on her laptop. Snow, velvet, champagne, the works. On our anniversary. I turned back to look at her. She was already gone, lost in the world of market volatility and corporate strategy. She was typing furiously, her mind operating on a plane I couldn't reach, but one I could facilitate. I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost hurt. She was magnificent. She was going to conquer the world, and I was the one sharpening her sword. I went to the bedroom to change out of my work clothes. I had to be at the data analysis firm in 3 hours. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, opening the banking app. Balance, $412. I did the mental math. The gala ticket was $300. That left $112 for 2 weeks of food and utilities. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the transfer button. If I bought the ticket, I'd be skipping lunch every day until the next paycheck. I'd be walking to work instead of taking the subway, adding an hour to my commute in freezing temperatures. I looked at my boots in the corner. The sole was separating from the leather on the left one. I had planned to replace them this week. I looked through the open bedroom door. Serafina was muttering to herself, highlighting a passage in her book, her posture perfect, her focus absolute. She was a thoroughbred racehorse. She couldn't run on uneven ground. She needed the track to be smooth. I pressed transfer. Transaction complete. The confirmation screen flashed green. A small knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach, but I pushed it down. It was worth it. She needed to be at that gala. She needed to meet the partners at the firms she was studying. I changed into my office clothes, a button-down shirt that I ironed meticulously every Sunday, and a pair of slacks that were slightly frayed at the hem. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the grey pallor of exhaustion. When I walked back into the main room, Serafina looked up, her face glowing. "I just figured out the solution to the arbitrage problem," she beamed. "It was so simple, I was overthinking the currency fluctuation variables." "I knew you'd get it," I said, grabbing an apple from the bowl, my breakfast and lunch combined. "I'm heading out. Data sets await." She stood up and rushed over to me, wrapping her arms around my neck. She smelled of vanilla and old paper. "I love you, Ethan. You're the best man I know. No one else would do this for me." "I'm not doing it for anyone else," I said into her hair. "Just you." "I won't let you down," she whispered. "When I'm up there, I'm pulling you up with me. It's you and me against the world." "You and me," I echoed. I left the apartment, the warmth of her embrace lingering on my skin like a phantom limb. The stairwell was freezing. As I descended the 4 flights, I passed Mrs. Higgins from 3B. She was lugging a bag of groceries up the stairs, wheezing. "Morning, Ethan," she gasped. "You look like hell, son." "Morning, Mrs. Higgins. Just tired." I grabbed the bottom of her grocery bag to help her up the landing. "You work too hard," she scolded, though she smiled gratefully as I set the bag down at her door. "That girl of yours, she's got her head in the clouds. You make sure you keep your feet on the ground." "She's going to be something special, Mrs. Higgins. You'll see." "She's already something," Mrs. Higgins muttered as she unlocked her door. "Expensive?" I forced a smile and continued down. She didn't understand. Nobody understood. They saw the sacrifice as a loss, but I saw it as architecture. I was building the foundation of a skyscraper. It required digging deep into the dirt, living in the dark for a while, so that eventually we could live in the clouds. The walk to the office was brutal. The wind had picked up, whipping through the thin fabric of my coat. My feet were numb within minutes, the hole in my boot letting in the slush. I focused on the rhythm of my steps. Left, right, left, right. For Serafina, for the future, for the Christmas wedding. I passed a high-end jewelry store window. Inside, nestled on velvet cushions, were diamond rings that cost more than I would make in 5 years. I stopped for a brief moment, my reflection superimposed over the glittering stones. I looked haggard, dark circles under my eyes, cheeks sunken, hair in need of a trim. I looked like a man who was being consumed. But then I imagined Serafina's hand, manicured and elegant, with one of those rings on her finger. I imagined her standing in a ballroom, raising a glass of champagne, looking across the crowd and locking eyes with me, the man who put her there. The man who saw her worth when she was just a student with a dream. The fantasy was potent. It warmed me more than the coat ever could. I turned away from the window and kept walking. The city was waking up, the noise of traffic swelling to a roar. Horns honked, sirens wailed, and the machinery of capitalism began its daily grind. I was just a small cog in that machine, grinding myself down to nothing, but I had a secret. I wasn't working for the machine, I was working for her, and she was going to be the queen of this city. Arriving at the office, I sat in my cubicle, the gray fabric walls boxing me in. My monitor flickered to life, endless rows of numbers and spreadsheets filling the screen. My eyes burned, gritty and dry. I blinked hard, trying to focus. "Hey, Ethan," a coworker, Mark, leaned over the partition. "You coming to the holiday party tonight?" "Free booze." "Can't," I said, not looking away from the screen. "Picking up a shift at the warehouse." Mark shook his head, sipping his latte. "Man, you gotta slow down. You're gonna burn out before you hit 30. "What are you saving for? A private island?" "Something like that," I murmured. "Well, suit yourself." "But you look like you need a drink and a coma," Not another shift. He rolled his chair away. I put my headphones on, blocking out the office chatter. I opened a spreadsheet, but it wasn't work. It was my own tracking sheet. Column A, expenses. Tuition, rent, books, utilities, transport, food, gala ticket, dress, anticipated. Column B, income. Day job, warehouse, weekend bartending. Column C, the gap. The gap was closing, but slowly, too slowly. Serafina had mentioned a winter study abroad program in London for the top 10% of her class. It wasn't mandatory, but it was highly recommended. The cost was astronomical. I stared at the blinking cursor. I needed another stream of income. Maybe I could sell the car. I barely used it. The insurance was a drain. Or maybe I could participate in those clinical trials the university hospital was advertising. A text message popped up on my phone screen. It was Serafina. OMG. Professor Vance just invited me to the preliminary mixer for the spring gala. He said my paper on emerging markets was visionary. Ethan, this is it. I need to confirm the ticket by tonight. I smiled, a genuine cracked lip smile. She was doing it. She was winning. I already transferred the money. I typed back, go get them. Her reply was instant. You are my savior. I love you. I'm going to make you so proud. I put the phone down and looked back at the spreadsheet. I deleted the row for new winter coat and dentist appointment. I typed in London Fund. I leaned back in my chair, the exhaustion pulling at my eyelids like gravity. I was hungry, my stomach cramping with emptiness, and my feet were wet blocks of ice. But in my mind, I wasn't in a cubicle. I was standing next to her, on a balcony overlooking the city, the snow falling softly around us, the future bright and paid for in full. I was the architect of her dreams, and tomorrow I would sacrifice whatever else was necessary to keep the structure standing. Because that's what love was. It was the quiet, unseen demolition of the self to build a palace for the other. Or so I thought. I reached for the keyboard, my fingers hovering over the keys, ready to turn another hour of my life into $1 for hers. The hum of the computer fan whirred, sounding strangely like a countdown. The drift didn't happen in a single tectonic shift. It was a slow, agonizing erosion, like water wearing down stone until the structure simply collapses. It started with the subtle changes in Serafina's vocabulary, words like equity, leverage, and optics, replacing the warm, intimate language we had built our relationship on. Then came the wardrobe, silks and cashmere that I had paid for, draped over a body that increasingly turned away from me in bed. I was working a double shift at the warehouse that Tuesday, the air thick with the smell of diesel and cardboard dust, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. Don't wait up. Networking drinks with the senior partners. I stared at the screen, wiping grease from my thumb. It was the third time that week. When I finally dragged myself home at 2 a.m., the apartment was silent. The air smelled of her new perfume, sandalwood and jasmine, a scent that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She was asleep, her phone lighting up on the nightstand with notifications I didn't have the passcode to read anymore. The real fracture happened 2 weeks later. She had asked me to pick her up from a gala at the Sterling Hotel because she had had too much champagne to drive, and a cab was beneath the image she was trying to project. I pulled my 10-year-old sedan up to the curb. The brakes squealed, a high-pitched shriek that made the valet wince. The car was a distinct blemish in a line of sleek black limousines and German engineering. I saw her standing under the golden awning, shivering slightly in a backless silver gown that shimmered like mercury. She wasn't alone. A man stood next to her. He was tall, wearing a tuxedo that fit him with the ease of a second skin, his hand resting casually, possessively, on the small of her back. He was laughing at something she said, his head thrown back, exposing a throat that had never known the stranglehold of financial panic. I got out of the car, the cold November wind biting through my thin jacket. "Serafina," I called out. She stiffened. The smile vanished, replaced instantly by a look of tight, controlled mortification. The man turned, his eyes scanning me with a polite, detached curiosity, as if I were a mildly interesting piece of street furniture. "Ethan," she said, her voice brittle. She stepped away from the man's touch, but not far enough. "You're early." "You said midnight," I replied, conscious of the grease stain on my jeans I hadn't had time to scrub out. "It's 12:15. The man extended a hand, manicured and smooth. "You must be the boyfriend. Serafina mentions you, occasionally. I'm Julian. Julian Thorne." Thorne. The name hit me like a physical blow. The Thorne family owned half the skyline. I took his hand. His grip was firm, indifferent. He looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes. He didn't see a threat. He didn't even see a rival. He saw nothing. "Ethan," I muttered. "Julian is the son of the firm's founder," Serafina interjected quickly, her eyes darting between the valet and my rusting car. "He's been mentoring me on the Asian markets account." "She's a prodigy," Julian said, his voice a rich baritone that seemed to vibrate in the cold air. He turned his smile back to her, ignoring me completely. "You have a brilliant future, Sarah. Don't let the small things hold you back." The small things. The drive home was suffocating. The heater in my car rattled, blowing lukewarm air that smelled of old dust. Serafina stared out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, eyes that looked harder than I remembered. "He seems nice," I said, testing the waters, desperate for her to bridge the gap. "He's a visionary," she replied, not looking at me. "He moves through the world differently, Ethan. He doesn't worry about rent or bills. He thinks about legacy. He thinks about empire." "I think about those things too," I said, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "I'm working myself into the ground to build something for us." She finally looked at me then, and the pity in her expression was worse than hatred. "You're working to survive, Ethan. There's a difference. Julian, he breathes success. Being around him makes me feel like I can finally breathe too." The end didn't come with a shout, but with a whisper, 3 weeks before Christmas. I came home to find suitcases in the hallway, not packed for a trip, but packed for an exit. Serafina was sitting at the small kitchen table, the one I had sanded and refinished myself, her hands clasped over a stack of papers. "What is this?" I asked, though the hollow ache in my chest told me I already knew. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," she said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. She didn't stand up. "We're living in two different realities. I'm ascending, and you're anchoring me." "Anchoring you?" I choked out a laugh, incredulous. I walked over to the counter where the stack of bills usually sat. Bills I paid. I paid for your MBA, Serafina. I paid for the unpaid internships in London. I paid for that dress you wore to impress Julian. I am the reason you can fly. "And I'm grateful," she said, the word tasting like ash. "But gratitude isn't love, and debt isn't a relationship." She slid a manila envelope across the table. "What is that?" "The lease transfer," she said, "and the paperwork for the student loans." I froze. "The loans are in my name. We agreed I'd take them on because my credit score was better at the time. We agreed you'd pay them off once you got the bonus." She stood up then, smoothing her skirt. She looked immaculate, untouched by the devastation she was unleashing. "I consulted with a lawyer, Ethan. Since we aren't married, the debt belongs to the signatory. Technically, legally, those are your loans." The room spun. The silence that followed was heavy, ringing in my ears like the aftermath of an explosion. "You're leaving me with the debt? $80,000 of debt used for your degree? Consider it an investment that didn't pay out," she said coldly. She walked past me, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. "Julian is waiting downstairs. He's sending a car for the rest of my things tomorrow." "Julian," I whispered. "So it is him." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. She looked back, not with regret, but with a chilling finality. "He offers me the world, Ethan. You can only offer me survival. I choose the world." The door clicked shut. The sound was softer than a heartbeat, but it signaled the death of my life. The weeks that followed were a blur of grey misery. I moved into a studio apartment the size of a closet because I couldn't afford the rent on our old place, plus the loan payments she had saddled me with. I ate instant noodles. I walked to work to save on gas. I existed in a fugue state of shock and humiliation. But the true knife to the heart came on Christmas Day. It was the anniversary of the day we had met. It was the day we had always joked, half seriously, that we would get married, surrounded by snow and poinsettias. I was sitting on my mattress on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, the heating in the building broken. The window was frosted over, obscuring the city that was celebrating without me. I opened my laptop, a masochistic impulse driving me to check social media to see if she was happy. I didn't have to search. It was everywhere. The headline on the local society page read, "A Christmas Union. Julian Thorne weds Serafina Vane in Winter Wonderland ceremony." I clicked the link, my hand trembling. The photos loaded slowly on the coffee shop Wi-Fi I was stealing from downstairs. There she was, Serafina. She was wearing a gown of white lace that likely cost more than I would earn in 5 years. She was radiant, smiling a smile I had never seen, a smile of absolute, unburdened triumph. And there was Julian, looking every bit the prince of the city, holding her hand as they cut a 7-tier cake adorned with sugar-spun roses. The article described the venue, the grand ballroom at the Thorne estate. It listed the guests, senators, tech moguls, old money dynasties. It described the vows, quoting Serafina. "I have finally found my equal, my partner in ambition and soul." My equal. I scrolled down. There was a photo of them dancing. Her head was thrown back, laughing, the diamonds around her neck catching the light. They looked untouchable. They looked inevitable. I looked around my room. The peeling paint. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The stack of final notice letters for the loans that had bought her that life. I had been the soil she grew in, and now that she had bloomed, she had shaken the dirt from her roots without a second thought. She was drinking vintage champagne in a ballroom while I sat in the dark, financially ruined, emotionally hollowed out, shivering on Christmas Day. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, reflecting my own gaunt face back at me. Tears didn't come. I was past tears. The sorrow that had been drowning me for weeks began to harden. It crystallized in the freezing air of that room, turning into something sharp, something jagged. She thought I was just a stepping stone. She thought I was history. She thought that because I lacked Julian's money, I lacked power. I sat there in the silence of Christmas, the ghost of her betrayal hovering in the cold air, and I felt the first flicker of a new emotion. It wasn't sadness, it was a cold, calculating clarity. She wanted a world of finance, of leverage, of consequences. Fine. I would learn her language. I would learn it better than she ever could. I would rebuild myself, not as the man who loved her, but as the disaster she never saw coming. "Merry Christmas, Serafina," I whispered to the empty room. The vow hung in the air, heavier than any promise of love we had ever made. The silence in my studio apartment was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, pressing against my eardrums with the weight of water at the bottom of the ocean. For the first few weeks, I had simply existed in that pressure, letting the crushing gravity of loss pin me to the stained mattress. But then, the pressure shifted. It stopped being a burden and became a forge. The grief, once a weeping wound, cauterized into something harder, colder. It became a singular, vibrating frequency of rage. I didn't want them back. I didn't want an apology. I wanted the scales to balance. And in the world Serafina had chosen, the world of Julian S. inheritance and pedigree, balance was not measured in sentiment. It was measured in leverage. I stopped drinking. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I cleared the walls of my mind, stripping away the memories of her smile and the phantom scent of her vanilla perfume, replacing them with ticker symbols, market trends, and the brutal mathematics of acquisition. My re-entry into the financial sector was not a gentle knock on the door. It was a breach. I had nothing left to lose, which made me the most dangerous creature in the market. I leveraged the tiny scrap of credit I had left, taking positions that conservative brokers would call suicidal. I shorted volatility. I bet against stability. When the markets bled, I drank. 3 years blurred into a grayscale montage of glowing monitors and lukewarm coffee. I moved from the studio to a loft in the financial district, not for the luxury, but for the proximity to the fiber optic veins that pulsed money through the city. I became a ghost in the machine. I wasn't Ethan, the heartbroken ex-boyfriend. I was a phantom entity, an LLC buried under 3 layers of anonymity, a force of nature that capitalized on the mistakes of the arrogant. Then came the target. I sat in the leather chair of my new office, the city lights sprawling below me like a bed of embers. Across the desk sat Marcus, a corporate attorney whose morals were as flexible as his billable hours. He was sweating, despite the aggressively low temperature of the air conditioning. He tapped a manila folder resting on the mahogany between us. "You understand what you're asking for, Ethan?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. He adjusted his glasses, the light reflecting off the lenses obscuring his eyes. "This isn't just a blind investment. It's practically charity for a drowning man, but you're structuring it like a hostility." I didn't blink. I stared at the folder. The label read, Vance Enterprises, Julian's legacy, the golden goose that Serafina had married into. "Is the company solvent?" I asked, my voice scraping low in my throat. Marcus scoffed, flipping the folder open. "Barely. They're over-leveraged on the European expansion. Julian Vance has been playing CEO for 2 years, and he's bleeding capital. He is trying to maintain a lifestyle and a dividend payout on a revenue stream that dried up in the last quarter. They need a liquidity injection, massive and immediate, or they default on their primary loans within 6 months." I leaned forward, the leather of my chair creaking. "And the banks?" "The banks have closed the taps," Marcus said, tracing a line on the balance sheet with a manicured finger. "He's too high risk. He's shopping for private equity, but nobody wants to touch a legacy firm that refuses to modernize. He's desperate, Ethan. He's looking for a miracle." "Then we give him one," I said. Marcus looked up, his brow furrowed. "Why? You've spent the last 3 years building a portfolio that is lean, aggressive, and logical. This is emotional. This is buying a sinking ship just to stand on the deck." "I don't want to stand on the deck, Marcus," I said, standing up and walking to the floor-to-ceiling window. The glass was cold against my forehead as I looked out. "I want to own the hull. I want to own the rudder. I want to own the air they breathe while they're on board." "You want to become the primary stakeholder via a shell company," Marcus clarified, reading from his notes. "Titanium Holdings, incorporating in the Caymans, subsidiary in Zurich, total anonymity." "Correct. But the terms," Marcus argued, flipping to the term sheet I had drafted. "Look at Clause 4A. You're giving them the capital at below-market interest rates. It's too generous. It's suspicious." I turned back to him. "It's not generous. It's bait. If the terms were predatory, Julian's lawyers would advise against it. They would look for the hook. I need the money to look like dumb money. I need them to think they found an angel investor who is more interested in the prestige of the Vance name than the ROI. They are arrogant, Marcus. They believe they deserve to be saved. We are simply confirming their bias." Marcus shook his head, pulling a gold pen from his pocket, but hesitating to write. "And the recall clause? Clause 12? Read it to me." Marcus cleared his throat. "The investor reserves the right to recall the full principal amount immediately upon any breach of covenant, including, but not limited to, failure to meet quarterly projection targets by a margin of 5%. He looked up. "Ethan, nobody agrees to this. It's a guillotine." "Julian will," I said softly. "Because he thinks he can meet the projections. He thinks the European expansion is just having teething problems. He doesn't realize the market has shifted. He'll sign because he's arrogant and because he's terrified of telling his board and his wife that the money is gone." Marcus remained silent for a long moment. The hum of the building's ventilation system filled the room, a low, mechanical breath. He looked at the papers, then at me. "This is personal," Marcus stated. It wasn't a question. It is entirely business, I corrected him, walking back to the desk and placing my hands flat on the polished wood. The business of acquisition. I am acquiring leverage. Do you have the paperwork ready for the transfer? I do. And the identity shielding is absolute. Ironclad, Marcus assured me. As far as Vance Enterprises knows, Titanium Holdings is a faceless conglomerate of European retirees looking for safe legacy assets. They will never hear your name. They will never see your face. You will just be a signature on a wire transfer. Good. Ethan, Marcus paused, his pen hovering over the final draft. If you pull this capital, if you trigger Clause 12, the liquidity crisis won't just hurt the company, it will bankrupt the family. The personal guarantees Julian has likely signed, he'll lose everything. The houses, the cars, the social standing. I am aware of the economics, Marcus. And the wife? Marcus asked quietly. He knew pieces of the story, enough to know there was a woman. She goes down with the ship. I felt a cold tightening in my chest, a phantom echo of the day she left. I remembered the look in her eyes, not malice, but indifference. The way she had looked at me as if I were a stepping stone she had already walked past. She wanted the high life. She wanted the view from the top. She wanted a world of consequences, I said, my voice devoid of temperature. I'm just providing the gravity. Marcus sighed, a sound of resignation, and uncapped his pen. The scratching of the nib against the paper sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. I'll have the proposal on Julian's desk by tomorrow morning, Marcus said, closing the folder. He's in panic mode. He'll sign within 48 hours. Make sure he feels like he won, I instructed. Make sure he feels like he outsmarted the mysterious investors. Feed his ego. It's the only thing big enough to blind him. When Marcus left, the office felt larger, colder. I sat back in the chair and swiveled toward the window again. I imagined Julian and Serafina in their penthouse, perhaps toasting to their resilience, perhaps arguing in hushed tones about the mounting bills. They had no idea that the floor they stood on was no longer solid ground. It was a trapdoor, and I was the one holding the lever. I reached into the drawer and pulled out a single printed photograph. It was from a society page in the Times. Serafina, draped in silk and diamonds, laughing at something Julian had whispered. She looked radiant. She looked expensive. I placed the photo on the desk and picked up my phone, dialing the private number of my broker in Zurich. It's done, I said when the line connected. Prepare the liquidity pool, 50 million, transfer to the escrow account for Titanium Holdings. Confirmed, sir. And the allocation strategy? Passive, I lied. We let them run the company. We let them feel safe. We let them build it up, paint the walls, and polish the silver. Understood. I hung up. The rage that had fueled me for 3 years didn't dissipate. It merely settled, heavy and cold, in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't just fixing my finances anymore. I was buying their fate. The current focus of my life had narrowed to a single point. The inevitable, catastrophic collision between their arrogance and my memory. I turned off the desk lamp, plunging the room into darkness, save for the city lights outside. I was the primary investor now. I was the silent partner. I was the architect of their salvation, just so I could be the engineer of their ruin. The wait would be long, but I had learned patience in the dark. I would watch them climb, step by arduous step, until they were high enough that the fall wouldn't just hurt. It would shatter them. Chapter 4. The Unseen Strings. The view from the 45th floor of the Archon Tower was not just a vista, it was a statement of absolute detachment. Below me, the city of London sprawled like a chaotic circuit board, pulsing with the frantic energy of millions of lives, but up here, in the hermetically sealed silence of my office, the air was cool, sterile, and smelled faintly of teak and expensive leather. I held the glossy quarterly report of Vance Global in my hands, the paper stock thick and textured, heavy with the weight of borrowed arrogance. On the cover, Julian Vance smiled, a wide, predatory expression of triumph that the business world had come to adore. Beside him, in a smaller inset photo from the company gala, stood Serafina. She was draped in sapphire silk, diamonds dripping from her earlobes like frozen tears. I ran my thumb over the image. I had paid for those diamonds. I had paid for the silk. I had paid for the smile. Technically, through a labyrinth of shell companies, offshore accounts, and blind trusts, I had paid for Julian's entire reputation. The intercom buzzed, a harsh intrusion into my sanctuary. "Mr. Blackwood." The voice of my assistant was soft, trembling slightly. "Mr. Sterling is here." "Send him in," I replied, my voice devoid of the tremor that used to plague me when I was just Ethan, the broke student. Now, as Ethan Blackwood, the reclusive financier, my voice was as flat and hard as the granite slab on my desk. The heavy oak doors swung open, and Arthur Sterling walked in. He was a man of 60, with silver hair and the weary posture of a lawyer who knew where all the bodies were buried because he had dug the graves himself. He was my proxy, the face of the Chimera Fund, the entity that Julian Vance believed was his guardian angel. Arthur didn't sit immediately. He walked to the window, looking out at the rain streaking the glass. "It's a long way down, Ethan." "That is the point, Arthur," I said, not looking up from the report. "How was the meeting with the board?" Arthur sighed, finally sinking into the leather chair opposite me. He placed his briefcase on the floor with a heavy thud. "They are ecstatic, ignorant but ecstatic." Julian presented the expansion plan for the Singapore branch. He spoke about visionary leadership and market intuition. He spent 20 minutes praising the mysterious partners at Chimera for their unwavering faith in his genius. "He thinks he's a genius," I murmured, turning the page. The graphs were all trending upward, green lines piercing the stratosphere. "And why shouldn't he? Every time he stumbles, we place a cushion beneath him. Every time he gambles, we rig the deck." "He wants more capital," Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave. I stopped reading. I looked up, locking eyes with the older man. "How much?" "50 million. He wants to acquire a logistics competitor to streamline the supply chain. It's aggressive, reckless even, given their current debt-to-equity ratio." Arthur leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Ethan, from a purely financial standpoint, this is suicide. If the market turns, Vance Global AIMO is leveraged to the hilt. You hold the debt. If he defaults, you lose the capital. We are dangerously exposed." I stood up, walking over to the sidebar to pour a glass of sparkling water. The bubbles hissed, a sound like 1,000 tiny secrets being whispered at once. "You are looking at this like an investor, Arthur. You're worried about return on investment." I took a sip, the cold liquid shocking my throat. "I am not looking for a return. I am buying altitude." "I don't follow," Arthur said, frustration leaking into his tone. "Imagine a man climbing a ladder," I said, gesturing vaguely to the city below. "If he falls from the second rung, he dusts himself off. He is embarrassed, perhaps a scraped knee. But if you help him, if you steady the ladder, encourage him, hand him the tools to build it higher and higher until his head is in the clouds, well, a fall from there isn't an accident. It's a fatality." Arthur remained silent for a long moment, studying me. "You want to give him the 50 million. Give it to him," I commanded softly. "But modify the terms. Short-term maturation. Callable on demand under specific breach clauses regarding liquidity ratios. Ratios we know he can maintain without our constant injection of cash. Make the noose out of silk, Arthur, so he doesn't feel it tightening around his neck." "He will sign it without reading," Arthur muttered, shaking his head. "He's too drunk on his own success to read the fine print. And Serafina, she's pushing him. She wants the lifestyle that comes with the expansion." The mention of her name tightened the muscles in my jaw. "Is she?" "I saw her at the signing for the last tranche," Arthur said, watching me carefully. "She asked about the investors. She wanted to know who the silent partner was. She said she wanted to invite them to the anniversary gala." I turned back to the window, my reflection staring back, a ghost superimposed over the city lights. She always did have a taste for gratitude, provided it didn't cost her anything. "What did you tell her?" "That the partner values anonymity above all else. that he prefers to watch from the shadows. Perfect. 3 weeks later, I found myself violating my own rules of engagement. I needed to see the edifice I had built. I needed to see the gilded cage before I kicked out the supports. The venue was the Metropolitan Opera House, a charity premiere for a cause I couldn't recall. I wasn't there as a VIP. I had purchased a ticket for a private box on the upper tier under a corporate alias, tucked away in the velvet darkness where the spotlight never touched. From my vantage point, the audience was a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, a murmuring ocean of old money and new ambition. But my eyes were fixed on Box 4, the prime seat in the house. There they were. Julian sat with the sprawling confidence of a king, one arm draped over the back of Serafina's chair. He looked older than I remembered, heavier, his face flushed with the rich food and fine wine of a life without consequence. He laughed at something someone whispered to him, a loud, booming laugh that signaled he expected everyone to listen. And Serafina. She was more beautiful than my memories allowed her to be. Time had refined her, sharpened her edges. She wore a gown of emerald green that clung to her silhouette, her hair swept up in an intricate chignon that exposed the long, elegant curve of her neck. She looked regal. She looked happy. That was the knife twist. If she had looked miserable, if she had looked trapped, perhaps my resolve would have wavered. But she looked triumphant. She leaned into Julian, whispering something in his ear, her hand resting possessively on his forearm. It was the same gesture she used to use with me, back in the cramped apartment where we ate instant noodles and dreamed of the future. My future, I thought, my grip on the opera glasses tightening until the leather creaked. You are living in my future. I watched as a stream of sycophants approached their box during the intermission. I could see the exchanges clearly through the lenses. A man in a grey suit bowed slightly, shaking Julian's hand with vigor. I recognized him, the CEO of a rival firm that Vance Global had crushed last quarter using the capital I provided. Julian, I imagined the man saying. Marvelous quarter. Simply marvelous. Julian waved a hand dismissively, false modesty radiating off him. It's all about strategy, old boy. You have to know when to strike. I lowered the glasses, nausea churning in my stomach. Strategy. He wouldn't know strategy if it cut his throat. He was a child playing with a loaded gun, unaware that I was the one aiming it. I stayed for the second act, not listening to the music. The soaring arias were just background noise to the calculations running through my mind. Every jewel on her neck represented a debt note. Every toast raised in their honor was a contractual obligation I held in a safe in Zurich. They were puppets. I could see the strings shimmering in the stage lights, thick cables of cash and credit that led directly up to my darkened box. All I had to do was twitch my finger, and they would dance. Or I could cut the strings, and they would collapse into a heap of wood and cloth. But not yet. The trap needed to be absolute. The next morning, I was back in the office before sunrise. The image of Serafina's smile burned in my mind, fueling a manic productivity. I summoned Arthur at 6 a.m. He looked disheveled, clearly pulled from bed, but he knew better than to complain. The gala, I said, skipping the pleasantries. The anniversary gala they are planning for December. Yes? Arthur rubbed his eyes. It's going to be the social event of the season. They are celebrating 10 years of Vance Global's resurgence. Coincides with their wedding anniversary. And Christmas, I added. A cruel, poetic convergence. The day she left me. The day the world ended. We are going to give them a gift, I said, walking over to the large wall of monitors displaying the global markets. Draft a new agreement, the Phoenix Protocol. We are going to offer to underwrite the entire gala, make it the most lavish event the city has ever seen. Whatever budget they have, triple it. Arthur frowned. Ethan, why? You're just burning money now. I'm fattening the calf, Arthur. I want the world to be watching. I want the press there. I want the live stream running to every financial hub in the world. I want them to stand on that stage, surrounded by opulence, believing they are gods. I turned to face him, my silhouette framed by the rising sun. And I want the maturity date of all outstanding loans to be set for that same night, midnight. Arthur's face went pale. He understood the mechanism immediately. You're going to call the loans in the middle of the party. No, I corrected him. I'm going to pull the investment, the liquidity clause we added to the Singapore expansion. It gives the primary investor the right to immediate withdrawal if confidence is lost. I am going to lose confidence at 11:59 p.m. It will destroy them, Arthur whispered. It won't just bankrupt the company, it will trigger a forensic audit. They've been using the operating capital to fund their personal lives. If the money vanishes, they will be exposed for embezzlement. They could go to prison. They stole my life, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. They stole my future. I am merely repossessing my assets. Arthur looked down at his hands. And if they try to negotiate? There is no negotiation with gravity, Arthur. Once you step off the ledge, the conversation is over. I turned back to the window. The sun was fully up now, bathing the city in a cold, hard light. The pieces were in place. The actors were on their marks. For years, I had been the ghost in the machine, the unseen variable in their equation of success. I watched the city wake up, thousands of people going about their lives, oblivious to the drama about to unfold in the towers above them. Somewhere out there, Serafina was waking up in silk sheets, perhaps ringing a bell for breakfast, thinking about her gala. She was thinking about the flowers, the music, the guest list. She had no idea that the most important guest had already arrived. "Draw up the papers, Arthur," I said, dismissing him. As the door clicked shut, I allowed myself a single rare moment of emotion. I touched the cold glass of the window, tracing the line of the horizon. "Merry Christmas, Serafina," I whispered to the empty room. "I hope you enjoy the view from the top. It's a long way down." The snow fell in thick, silent sheets against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the grand ballroom, a stark, white contrast to the golden warmth radiating inside. It was Christmas Eve, and, simultaneously, the 5th anniversary of the day Serafina and Julian had exchanged vows. The air inside smelled of roasted chestnuts, imported orchids, and the metallic tang of expensive champagne, a scent that used to intimidate me, but now merely smelled like leverage. I stood in the shadow of a massive marble pillar, my hand resting casually in the pocket of a bespoke tuxedo that cost more than the apartment Serafina and I once shared. The fabric was cool against my fingertips, grounding me. From my vantage point, the gala was a swirling kaleidoscope of silk and velvet. The city's elite had gathered to celebrate the meteoric rise of Julian's family empire, unaware that the architect of that rise, and its impending demolition, was watching them from 10 feet away. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian's voice boomed over the microphone, smooth and practiced. He stood on the raised dais, a glass raised high. Beside him, Serafina shimmered in a gown of emerald silk, diamonds dripping from her ears like frozen tears. She looked breathtaking. She also looked entirely bought and paid for. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the holidays, or 5 years of marriage to my beautiful muse," Julian continued, squeezing Serafina's waist possessively. "We celebrate a record-breaking year for the Sterling Group, a year made possible by our silent partners at Vanguard Holdings, whoever they may be. To prosperity. To prosperity." The crowd roared back, a sea of crystal glasses clinking in a dissonance that grated on my ears. I took a sip of my sparkling water. The bubbles burst sharply against my tongue. It was time. As the jazz band struck up a slow, languid rendition of "I'll Be Home for Christmas," I stepped out of the shadows. I didn't rush. I walked with the measured cadence of a man who owned the floorboards beneath his feet. I navigated through the crowd, the throng parting unconsciously around me, sensing a gravity they couldn't name. I reached the base of the dais just as Julian was handing his glass to a waiter. Serafina was the first to see me. Her smile, practiced and plastic for the cameras, faltered. It didn't disappear instantly. It degraded in slow motion. Her eyes widened, the pupils contracting as her brain tried to reconcile the man standing before her with the memory of the boy she had discarded in a pile of unpaid bills. "Ethan?" she whispered. the sound barely audible over the music. Julian turned, following her gaze. His brow furrowed in confusion, then smoothed into a mask of arrogant dismissal. He didn't recognize me instantly. I was cleaner, sharper, harder than the desperate man he had laughed at 5 years ago, but he recognized the threat of an interloper. "Excuse me," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave, intended to intimidate. "This is a private event. Security is at the door." "I know," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the tremor that had plagued me the last time we spoke. "I approved the budget for the security detail. They're excellent." Julian blinked, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "I'm sorry? Have we met?" I climbed the 3 steps to the dais. Up close, I could see the fine lines of stress around Serafina's eyes, concealed under layers of foundation. I could smell Julian's cologne, sandalwood and ego. "We haven't met properly, Julian," I said, stopping a mere foot from him. "But we've been very intimate financially for the last 3 years." Serafina took a step back, her hand flying to her throat to clutch her diamond necklace. "Ethan, you look wealthy?" I finished for her. "Solvent? Powerful?" I turned my gaze fully on her. It's amazing what a man can achieve when he isn't drowning in debt to fund someone else's delusions of grandeur. "What are you doing here?" Julian demanded, stepping between us, puffing out his chest. "If you're some ghost from Serafina's past looking for a handout, you've picked the wrong night. We're celebrating success here." "I know," I repeated. I pulled my phone from my inner pocket. The screen glowed with the Vanguard Holdings interface. "I'm here to accept your gratitude. You toasted me a moment ago. I am Vanguard Holdings." The silence that fell over the immediate vicinity was heavy, suffocating. Julian's face went slack. "That's impossible. Vanguard is an offshore conglomerate. The primary investor is me," I said softly. 70% of your operating capital. The bridge loans that saved you from bankruptcy 2 years ago. The financing for the expansion into Asia. It was all me, Julian. Every dollar you've spent, every bonus you've paid yourself, came from the man you stole from. Julian laughed, but it was a brittle, cracking sound. "You're lying. You were a nobody, a broke accountant. And you were a charismatic heir with a failing business model," I countered. "I fixed the business, but I didn't fix the man." I tapped the screen of my phone once. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was as mundane as checking the weather. "What did you just do?" Serafina asked, her voice trembling. She knew me better than him. She recognized the look in my eyes, the obsessive focus that used to be directed at her happiness, now directed at their destruction. "Check your phone, Julian," I said. Julian frowned, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his device. A notification flashed, then another, then a cascade of buzzing vibrations that sounded like an angry hornet trapped in his palm. "What is this?" Julian muttered, swiping at the screen. "Market alert! Liquidity warning!" He looked up, his face draining of color. "Why am I getting a margin call notice? The markets are closed. Private equity agreements aren't bound by market hours when the breach of contract clauses are activated," I explained, my tone conversational. "Section 4, paragraph B of our lending agreement, the good faith clause. It states that the primary investor can recall all principal and interest immediately if the management is deemed morally or ethically compromised, or if the investor simply decides the risk profile has shifted." "You can't do that," Julian stammered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill of the room. "That capital is tied up in infrastructure. If you pull the liquidity now..." "The algorithms are already executing the sell orders," I interrupted. "I've just dumped my entire stake in your subsidiaries, and I've recalled the $300 million loan." "You have..." I checked my watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than Julian's car. "About 12 minutes before the automated banking systems freeze your corporate accounts for insolvency." "No," Serafina breathed, grabbing Julian's arm. "Julian, tell him he's lying. Tell him we have reserves." Julian shook her off, staring at his phone with wide, terrified eyes. The reserves were leveraged against the Vanguard loan. If he calls the loan, Serafina, the house, the cars, the company accounts, it's all collateral. Everything, she whispered. Everything, I confirmed. I looked at Serafina. I searched for the love I had once felt, the burning desire that had driven me to ruin myself for her. I found nothing, just a hollow space where my heart used to be. She looked small, ordinary. Why? She asked, tears finally spilling over, cutting tracks through her makeup. Ethan, why wait until now? Why build us up just to do this? Because you didn't just break my heart, Serafina, I said, leaning in close so only she could hear the venom in my whisper. You broke my life. You took my future and handed it to him because he was shiny and easy. I wanted you to know how it feels to stand on top of the world and have the floor drop out. I wanted you to feel the precise weight of betrayal. We can fight this, Julian snarled, though his voice lacked conviction. He was furiously typing on his phone. I'll call my lawyers. I'll sue you for predatory lending. You can try, I said, stepping back. But you signed the contracts, Julian. You were so eager for the cash injection, so desperate to keep up appearances, you didn't even read the addendums. You walked into the cage because it was gold-plated. Around us, the party was faltering. The guests were noticing the commotion. A few were checking their own phones, seeing the breaking news alerts about the sudden, inexplicable crash of the Sterling Group's credit rating. The music seemed to warp, the festive atmosphere curdling into confusion. Please, Serafina said. She reached out, her hand hovering inches from my sleeve. Ethan, please don't do this. It's Christmas. I looked at her hand, the manicured nails, the diamond ring I hadn't bought. I know, I said coldly. Merry Christmas, Serafina. I turned my back on them. Ethan, Julian shouted, his voice cracking into a scream. You'll ruin yourself. You're losing millions on this withdrawal. I stopped and looked over my shoulder. The room was staring at us now. The band had stopped playing. It's not a loss, Julian, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. It's an expense, the price of admission to watch you fall. I walked away. Behind me, the chaos erupted. I heard Julian shouting into his phone, demanding answers from bankers who were likely already shredding his files. I heard Serafina sobbing, a ragged, ugly sound that echoed off the high ceilings. I pushed through the heavy double doors and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit me like a physical blow, cleansing the perfume and desperation from my lungs. The snow was still falling, covering the city in a blanket of white, burying the dirt and the grime. My phone buzzed. A confirmation message. Transfer complete. Assets liquidated. I stood on the curb, watching my breath plume in the icy air. I had expected to feel joy. I had expected a rush of adrenaline. Instead, I felt a profound, quiet stillness. The debt was paid. The ledger was balanced. I buttoned my coat, turned my collar up against the wind, and began to walk into the dark, snowy night, leaving the glowing, crumbling castle behind me.